Love this podcast? Support this show through the Acast supporter feature. It's up to you how much you give, and there's no regular commitment. Just click the link in the show description to support now.
You're locked in.
Look at what we have here, folks.
To the only show that matters.
The cream of the crop.
Duke loves wrestling.
And there is no one that does it better than
your host.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
The Duke.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Welcome back. Welcome back to the Duke Loves Wrestling podcast, the show about pro wrestling and everything else. That's right. Listen, we celebrated our 3-year anniversary last week. How cool was that, huh? In fact, you can head over to the YouTube channel, to iTunes, type in Duke Loves Wrestling, hear that excellent episode. I'll tell you, man, it's been a wild week. You know, we're coming off of the All Elite Wrestling Double or Nothing pay-per-view, and whew, you would have thought I slapped somebody's mama the way some of you folks out there have given me a hard time. I wrote a piece. Over at medium.com. Just go over to Medium and type in Duke Loves Wrestling. And in the piece, I described the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know, I described how I felt about the pay-per-view. And some of the folks out there have just been enraged. Well, some of you understand where I'm coming from. So in this episode, we're going to dig into a little bit of that. You know, I have two guests who are going to present two sides of the coin here. You know, our first guest, Roy Lucier, you know, the super fan, he's going to talk about StarCast, which he was there personally. He was there live. You know, that was the mega convention that Conrad Thompson puts on, and AEW Double or Nothing was in the middle of all that. So Roy will express his views on the whole controversy there. And then a little later in the show, you're going to hear my strong discussion with indie wrestler Dewan O'Neil, a.k.a. Second to None. And this guy just completely disagrees with me, really upset. He's here to defend the business and, you know, all that jazz, so whatever. Let's not even waste any time. Let's jump into my conversation with the super fan, Mr. Roy Lucier.
So, folks, as you know, my main man, Conrad Thompson, he had his second, which hopefully it's annual. I mean, you know, it's the second time in 2 years here. His second version of StarCast called StarCast 2. It is the biggest wrestling fan convention, and a lot of folks will say that it's the best because of the variety and all the top stars and what have you that were there. I wasn't able to make it out to Vegas to see StarCast, but I got the next best thing. Folks, let's welcome back our man, Brother Roy Lucier, the super fan. How are you, Roy?
I'm doing amazing. How about yourself, Duke?
Very well, very well. Always great to hear your voice there. Now, you were at StarCast. Tell us how the whole event went there.
StarCast was amazing. It really was an amazing time. You know, there was the wide variety of wrestlers to meet. For example, if you wanted to meet old WWF stars, if you wanted to meet old NWA stars, if you wanted to meet current stars, you know, there's just a nice wide variety of different stars to meet. And, you know, for the most part, the prices were not bad and quite reasonable, especially if you got in on the flash sales that StarCast ended up having. For example, 3 times before StarCast happened, they would have a flash sale going where certain people's meet and greets were half off. Now, not everybody, but pretty much 90% of the guys. So I kind of waited for that, and I got like 11 different people, and it was around $220, somewhere around there, for 11 different meet and greets and stuff. So, for example, a Kobashi meet and greet that would have normally been $100 ended up only being $50. Rock and Roll Express, which was $30, went down to $15. So, I mean, there was a lot of different variety, and as long as you got in on a flash sale, it really didn't break the bank as much as it could have. Now, once you got in the room, it was a couple separate rooms. Now, I do want to make it up front. I didn't attend any of the panels. I was only there for one day, that day being Saturday. So any of the stuff involved in these panels, whether it be the free ones like the ones with Bill Apter or Matthew from Botchamania, or the one that Willie Mack and Chris Bay did on racism and stereotypes in the sport, unfortunately, I didn't get to go to any of that. So because I was there for such a short amount of time, I had to be very choosy what I did with my time. But what they had was they had one room when you went down a long hall. They had a room to the left, which is where the bigger names were at, the guys that were going to sell more meet and greets, like the Bret Harts, the Horsemen, the Pentagon and Phoenix, Haku, Tama Tonga, Tongaloa, Taz, people like that. And then to the right, they had what was called the Collector's Corner, which was about 8 or 9 rows of meet and greets, people with their merchandise, vendors and booths and stuff like that, like high spots, and there was a collecting card game. And it was not like super crowded, but I mean, it was a nice set of people and stuff like that. And in that collector's corner, you got quite the time to sit there and talk with the talent too. You never really felt rushed. I think the only quote unquote rush would be someone like Arn Anderson, who had such a small window and a long line. I think his thing was Saturday from 1 to 2, that one was kind of a little rushed, but everyone else had a long line, or a long time. Like, for example, I'm going to say this one, Harry Smith, Davey Boy Smith Jr. was listed from 10 to 1. He had such a steady flow of people. He stayed until pretty much the whole event ended, because it's like, there's that chance that someone may walk up and, want to get an autograph and a picture and stuff like that. And everyone that I talked to was so personable and, answered questions, and it really was a great time.
One of the things that I really appreciate about you, Roy, is that you're a very good record keeper. So not just the stories that you're able to tell and what have you, but you have the photos and messages and things and, the videos and all these great things that years from now people can go back and take a look at. And I noticed you posted a photo of an autograph that Chris Jericho gave you years ago, and then you were able to get an updated version of it. So tell us that story, because that's a pretty cool thing there with this interaction with you and Jericho.
So the deal with Jericho is 23 years ago, I have a friend that lived in Orange County who ran WPW, World Pro Wrestling, out of Anaheim at the Marketplace, named Martin Marin. He's a well-known lucha promoter that ran at the Anaheim Marketplace, and he also worked in Mexico City over the years. Well, one day he called me up and he said, "Hey, my friend Chris Jericho from ECW is in town. Do you want to come over and meet him?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I know exactly who he is, because I followed CMLL, I followed FMW, I followed WAR, so I knew who he was." So me and a couple people I used to know went over there and went to go introduce ourselves to Jericho and hung out with him and stuff like that. And when I told Jericho that I was a tape trader and that I had a satellite dish with all my with the CMLL, UWA, and AAA TV shows, he told me he had none of his own lucha tapes. So what I did for him was, after I parted ways with him that night, I went home and grabbed all the CMLL stuff that he was on, stayed up pretty late, and then the next day went back over there and I gave him a tape, which was like 4 hours of just his CMLL matches, like a custom tape or something like that. So he ended up working in Compton later that day too. That would be March 1st, 1996. And then he also worked another shot at the All Nation Center in Los Angeles, March 3rd, 1996. While he was there, he saw Ozzy Osbourne for the first time as well, because he had never seen Ozzy before, and that's kind of what inspired him to create the band Fozzy Osbourne, which now just goes by the name Fozzy. And so me and Jericho, got to be pretty tight and see each other at a lot of shows and stuff like that, like the Peace Festival, Halloween Havoc, his early days of WCW and stuff like that. Well, I had the period where I didn't go to any wrestling events or shows for a long time. But every time he would sign an autograph for me, it was just a running joke between us. I'd be like, screw you, Chris. Hey, screw you, Roy. So he would always sign every autograph, screw you, Roy. So when I saw him last Friday night, I was leaving the MGM Grand, and as I was leaving, I looked over by an ice cream shop, and I saw Chris and his family there and stuff. And people were walking up and approaching him, so it wasn't like the vibe, don't approach me or something. So I went up to him and I introduced myself. He did remember who I was and stuff. And when I had the Peace Festival program on me because I had a bag with all my stuff in it. It was just coincidence. So I went up to him and I showed him the Peace Festival program, which he showed his wife and was going through each match. And he fought a triangular match with Bigelow and Conan on the show. And I did need his autograph for it. So when he did the autograph on there, he wrote, "Screw you, Roy, Chris Jericho, Lionheart" on there.
23 years later.
23 years later, he still wrote "Screw you, Roy" on it.
Man,
and I'm seeing him again in September. Fozzie's performing up here, and him and I are still staying out beforehand. And I guarantee you that anything I get signed then will also have "Screw you, Roy" on it.
It's crazy, Roy, because this is just one of a million stories that you have with interaction with wrestlers. You truly are a well-respected fan and historian of the sport, and the wrestlers really appreciate you. Jericho should get you on his show, man, because I can only imagine a taped conversation between the two of you just talking about some of the stuff, and even you reminding him of some of the things that he's done in his career, especially his early career. That would be a hell of a listen.
Yeah, because when I mentioned, do you remember working the show in Compton? He vaguely remembered it. The only thing he remembered about it was where he stayed, the Ozzy concert, and that he worked with Superboy. But I have that show on tape, and so I remember a lot of details about it and stuff. So, definitely. You got to remember, a lot of these guys have been wrestling 20, 30 years at this point. Like, for example, when I saw Rey Mysterio Jr. A year and a half ago in Stockton, he got some of the names of the pay-per-views confused, and that's common. You can't expect someone who's worked tens of thousands of matches, to know specifically each and every date. That's something that a lot of us as fans and historians need to remember, is sometimes someone's memory, especially with concussions involved, may not be the best. So that's why it's a good thing to, for a lot of us to keep track and records of a lot of this stuff so that we have the stories to tell all these years later.
And that's a great point. And in that sense, personally, I take it as a badge of honor, and I know you do as well, to be able to remind the wrestlers of these moments or jog their memory so it comes back to them. You know what I mean? Because it brings them back to that point when you do that, which is always a neat thing to do, especially for people who, we look up to and we have appreciated, who entertained us for so long. You brought up a good point, though, Roy, when you talked about concussions and CTE and things of that nature there. I wrote a piece, which I posted on my Medium site, where I talked about Double or Nothing, AEW's pay-per-view, which, was at the end of well, not even the end. It was on the Saturday of the StarCast weekend there. And one of the things that really jumped out at me that I was completely disappointed with AEW over was the fact that there were so many headshots, especially during the Battle Royal.
The Battle Royal, yeah.
It was tremendous to see people like Tommy Dreamer picking up weapons and hitting people in the head and getting hit in the head, especially considering over the past, almost 10 years now, that's really been frowned upon for major promotions in the industry. What's your impression of the headshot stuff and just even the AEW pay-per-view overall, how it's been received.
Well, for example, my wife and I think yesterday, or actually the night I got back, I think we were watching Beyond the Mat, and we were watching the scene with The Rock and Mick Foley at Royal Rumble 99. What was it, like 12 or 13 unprotected chair shots to the head? And I remember being there live for it. And, at the time, it was just like, wow, that's the finish or something like that, because I just expected more out of it. But, just like everything in life, you grow and you learn and you mature and you look at it and you're just like, God, was that really necessary? That was just horrible. I wish that, they the business as a whole, and not just AEW, but a lot of these, smaller promotions and stuff like that, fans will get upset when certain guys don't work as hard as they did in front of 50 people when they get the call up and they're working in front of 12,000 people. And it's like, what did they have to do to get to that point to begin with? They did put their bodies on the line. They did do that. You're going to get mad at Mick Foley for grabbing a sock out of his pants and getting a bigger pop than, when he took an unprotected chair shot to the head. It's cringeworthy. It's scary to see. I just wish if you're going to do it sporadically. Don't have 30 chair shots to the head or weapons to the head or anything that could bring on a concussion, because you just lessen the impact of it. You just possibly put someone's career at risk, all to try to get that one big pop. Make it as sporadic as possible if you're going to do anything involving the head is all I would say. Not just AEW, but any promotion out there that's, even if you notice, even New Japan doesn't do the unprotected chair shots to the head anymore.
No,
they've learned.
Yeah, well, is it Shibata? Who was the guy who had the serious neck injury?
Shibata,
and he was doing a lot of head stuff for so many years.
What finally did it was an unprotected headbutt to Okada in an IWGP title match.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. He's not going to wrestle again, right?
No, he'll never wrestle again. He has a job for life with the company as their head trainer as long as he wants it. Yep. And he's a hell of a guy and a hell of a trainer and hell of a good memory too. He's a fun guy to hang out with and stuff for sure. But yeah, I guarantee you one of the lessons that he teaches the young lions in training school is the crap involving the headshots. Just it's unnecessary. It really is.
What is your impression of not just the AEW Double or Nothing pay-per-view itself? Because I know that you were traveling, what have you. I'm not sure if you were able to catch the entire thing, but I'm sure you've seen most of it. But
I've caught 95% of it. Yeah. Well,
yeah, exactly. But more importantly, the reaction of the internet wrestling community and in my opinion, the overreaction. Oh, WWE's in trouble now. What is I'm surprised that, hold on a second. I am so surprised that I didn't see Kayfabe News come out with an article the next day saying WWE files for bankruptcy due to Double or Nothing. The reactions were just way too much. I get it. We live in a society with the us versus them mentality. Nothing is going to change that. Unfortunately, that is something in life that we're going to live with. Whether it be in politics, you're going to get the extremists on one side versus the extremists on the other side. Unfortunately, we're getting that with pro wrestling too. We get the WWE versus the AEW fans. There's obviously enough room in this world for both and all other companies to exist. They have a fresh, hot, young product, and I loved a lot of what I saw. I loved the stuff with them bringing in the women, and Kenny Omega did a great job choosing the 6 women that he brought in for that match. That was a hell of a match.
I loved that match. There was a couple other matches on there too that I really loved. There was a couple matches that, I enjoyed, like what the Lucha Brothers against Pentagon or Lucha Brothers against the Young Bucks was great.
Yeah, it was. The Japanese women, like you said.
Yeah, that was my favorite match. That was
easily
my favorite match was the Japanese women, because it's like you got Aja Kong, who's been doing this for 30-something years at this point, who knows what to do to get a crowd reaction and make it look devastating. She did a great job there. But the whole us versus them mentality, there's enough of it in the world. And do I believe that WWE needs a little shaken up? I absolutely do. Like, let me just say this. When your show has 53 minutes of talking before you have your first match, I don't agree with that. That to me, it was almost like, are you doing this on purpose? But just know that there's enough room in this world for both companies to exist, is how I feel.
So, in your opinion, do you feel it's an overreaction, or do you think it makes sense how people have reacted to that pay-per-view and its impact on WWE?
I don't think we'll understand the true impact yet until they actually get TV, until they're a weekly deal and we start seeing those ratings. At this point, we have a very vocal few thousand people who, for all we know, a couple thousand may have ordered it and the rest of them illegally streamed it. So you could sit there and talk all you want on Twitter and social media about how great the show was, but let me ask you something. What's the percentage of people that actually ordered that versus illegally streaming it? To me, you got to look at the big picture here. What was it at Raw last night? There was an AEW chant started, and I'm already seeing people, I'm going to Raw next week, and I'm going to start an AEW chant too. So you're actually paying money to the promotion that you're complaining about to go start a chant at a show. Yeah, WWE really lost that one.
They got your money, bozo.
Exactly.
And that's what a lot of these folks don't understand. At the end of the day, forget about your love of the game and all this other garbage that a lot of these fools, they don't apply in their real lives. You don't have your job because of the love of the job. You have a job because you want to make as much money as you can to put food on the table and live a comfortable life. The name of the game is business, and the objective of a business is to make money. And the WWE does that better than anyone has ever done it in pro wrestling. So if they continue to make all this money, what could they possibly be worried about?
Yeah. When you're illegally streaming something, when you're still buying tickets to the competitor, you know what? The people that are on there complaining week after week and watching it and stuff like that, the thing is that you're still watching it. You're still giving them exposure. The best thing that you can honestly do if you're really tired and fed up with something is what we call the business no sell it. Don't discuss them. Don't bring them up. Don't give them the visibility that they are looking for. I haven't watched Raw in quite some time, and there's things about the product that I don't like. However, I'm not going to sit here every single week on social media and complain about it. To me, that just makes you. What's the point? You're going to end up just having a stroke in an early age if you do that. Just what's the point?
And more importantly, all you're doing is continuing to boost their profile. Now, mind you, if you're watching weekly and you're critiquing it because you're trying to lead a charge to help make a change, that's one thing, and that. That mode of doing things is I'm not against that. But if you're legitimately not watching, but every week you're criticizing and talking trash about it and what have you, you're just helping them. You're giving them free advertising.
Yeah, that's all you're doing. Yeah, seriously. So when it comes to AEW versus WWE, it's just way too early to say. They've ran show one, which was successful. They sold out I mean, I don't know the specifics on scalper tickets. I mean, I even though I couldn't make the show live, I was still keeping an eye on the scalper tickets beforehand, and there was quite a few. I don't know what scalpers do the day of the show to get their money back if the tickets didn't sell. But AEW is not the only one with this problem. I mean, there's concerts, WWE has the same thing, there's sporting events that have the same thing. So I don't know the logistics behind that, and I'm sure there's people more educated about that subject than me that could speak about that. All I know is on TV and from the people that I spoke to, the seats were full, it was a hot crowd, and on paper, they did sell out of the building, regardless of any scalper tickets or whatever. Now, can they keep that up for shows 2, shows 3, shows 4, and so on, and for their TV? You know, like a friend of mine who really educated me on this said, you know, a couple of years ago when New Japan was really doing good, he thought you really got to look at the overall picture. New Japan makes like 7-8% of what WWE makes. They have to get to the point of how much money they're making before WWE will really take them seriously. Just because they run one show at the Tokyo Dome that draws 50,000 people is not about to put them out of business. You know, it's just, that's ridiculous to talk about. You know, you have to do things like the video game. You know, they really tried with that video game, that Super Fire game, and, you know, things like that. But same thing with AEW. They want to be taken seriously. That was a great start, but that's all it was a start. How do you keep up that momentum week after week? Your roster is 40, 50 people? How every week are you going to do a TV show, keep it fresh, keep it where people keep watching and stuff like that? That's going to be the telling sign, you know, to me.
Do you have anything that you want to plug before we let you go there, Roy? Those are some solid points there, brother.
I got a website called royswrestlingvault.com, like vault, like VAULT. On my website, I have the DVDs in my collection up to date, how to watch them, well, certain ones, if there's a YouTube link to them, my newest uploads, some stories in the business, lucha clippings from Los Angeles from 92, 93, 94. And every week I'm looking to upload more and more rare footage up onto my YouTube channels. Like, currently I'm working on a ton of Mexico stuff. For example, I found a TV show the other day, and the show opened up with a clip with Kamala doing an interview. Now, did you see this at all, Duke?
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Did you see the... Yeah. Did you see the Black Magic one after?
No, I didn't see that. I'm gonna have to go back and check
Smiley. Yeah, Norman Smiley did this interview right afterwards talking about Kamala. In my world, I am the magician, and you can't beat me in any city in Mexico. And it's like, the second that I put it up, I had guys from WWE texting me like, oh my God, that's the greatest thing ever. Cause, you know, Norman works for them in the training camp and in the performance center and stuff. So, you know, finding these little rare gems and stuff like that, it really, you know, it's what I live for. It's amazing to find something that, you know, wasn't out there before, no one's seen before, and being able to share that with the world. There's a lot more to the wrestling world than WWE, but we also need to recognize that they're not going anywhere. One show does not mean that they're going to be going out of business anytime soon. I mean, let's be real, people. They make way too much money. It may have shaken them a little bit as far as their how do you say it? Well, I'm just. We need a lot more, the AEW needs a lot more stuff under their belt before they could be a true viable competitor to the WWE for sure, but that was a great start. I'll say that for them.
It's always a pleasure to talk to Brother Roy. You know, he's legitimately a super fan. He's very well respected. He's just a guy that gets it. understands pro wrestling very well, understands what he likes as a consumer of the pro wrestling product, and just a real overall great dude. So shout out to Roy. Thank you very much, as always, Roy. Love chopping it up with you and catching up and what have you. Now, we're going to head over to a very heated conversation. So, that was a very civil, complimentary conversation I had with Brother Roy. About to go into a heated conversation. Dewan O'Neal is an indie wrestler who completely disagrees with my assessment of All Elite Wrestling and their Double or Nothing pay-per-view. And you're really going to hear us go at it on this one, folks. So I'm just warning you right now. But have a listen, and then we'll talk about it afterwards.
Folks, it really has been ridiculous. I mean, that's the word that comes to mind describing what's been going on here. I watched the AEW pay-per-view, and I wrote a piece, which you can find on medium.com. Right? Just type in Duke Loves Rasslin and take a look at my latest piece there. And in the piece, which is entitled The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, I pointed out things that I agreed with, things that I felt AEW did well, things that they did bad, and legitimately the ugly parts of that pay-per-view. And look, I'm not going to sit here and look the other way when I see something that makes no sense. I'm going to call it out. The response that I got has just been over the top. I mean, many of you listeners out there, people who aren't listeners and now they're listeners, and even a lot of people in the wrestling industry have expressed displeasure with me over some of the things that I wrote. And one of them just happens to be one of the top indie wrestlers on the scene right now, Mr. Second to None, Dewan O'Neal. And I got him on the line here. I told you I was going to bring him on because I wanted to give him a platform to express how he felt. But I just want to let everybody know, he sent me some very strongly worded messages regarding what I wrote. And Dewan O'Neal, I don't understand what your problem is, because it's almost as if you and I watch two totally different pay-per-views.
Duke, anytime you and I watch the same thing, it's always two totally different shows. Like, I feel honestly that you almost wrote that article out of anger, or you're trolling. One of the two has to be true.
I see. This is what I'm talking about. Listen, you and I, you know what I mean. We have had our disagreements about different topics related to pro wrestling. We've had some agreements as well. But truthfully, let's cut all the BS here. Truthfully, the Double or Nothing pay-per-view overall was just not it. AEW is trying to position themselves as an alternative, but at the same time a competitor to the WWE. But they're doing headshots. People getting hit upside the head with foreign objects, right? Like, as if they don't give a damn about concussions and CTE. People are bleeding all over the place, and the referee doesn't even have gloves on, right? As if they don't give a damn about the safety of that situation. They can't even tell people which YouTube channel to turn to see the free offerings that they had for the pay-per-view. There's supposed to be 2 free matches that people were able to see, and you're supposed to see it on the All Elite Wrestling YouTube channel. And then when people went to it, it wasn't there for over 40 minutes. You had to go to TNT Sports' YouTube channel, which I figured that out because TNT Sports aired a special an hour before the All Elite Wrestling pay-per-view free preview, or whatever the hell they want to call it. My point is this. There's a lot of dysfunction in that. And I don't understand, especially a guy like you who's in the business, how could you look at that and not be honest about the fact that there's a lot of dysfunction there and it's things that they need to improve upon?
Well, the problem is a lot of people don't take in the totality of circumstances here, right? These guys they're running. All Elite Wrestling is a brand new baby company. And any promoter, any booker, any wrestler on the planet will tell you that what you just mentioned is minor compared to the amount of things that could have gone wrong. And I feel like that because they are positioning themselves to be an alternative and or a competitor at some point, that a lot of people are expecting 3 wrestlers and a football CEO to come out and run a show with the experience and the cleanliness of Vince McMahon. And that's not the case. Like, I feel like that naysayers are definitely too hard on the crew at AEW. I, for one, think they did a phenomenal job.
That's just a ridiculous point. And I'll tell you why that's a ridiculous point. Whatever the expectations of that exist for AEW, they created those expectations. Let me tell you something. I didn't create the narrative that they're going to be a competitor or that they're at war with WWE. That's what they're pushing. They're telling everybody that. They're telling everybody this is going to be this great thing. And then they go out there and they make these, quite frankly, unnecessary mistakes. I mean, just unnecessary. You can't tell me that headshots are something that can't be avoided. You can't tell me that.
Have you heard of creative control?
Creative control? So you mean to tell me you gotta be kidding me right now? A creative control?
Why?
So you're gonna have people get their brains bashed in your company, right? The first thing that people see is somebody getting their head bashed in your company when you own soccer teams and football teams. When concussions and CTE, there's lawsuits everywhere. There's all kind of stuff going on that you're very knowledgeable about. And I'm talking about the Khan family, people that own this operation, people who are going to be responsible and on the hook when things go south, when these wrestlers start suing them in a couple of years, right? You mean to tell me they're going to give creative control to wrestlers to bash their heads in? Come on, stop it right now.
It's an alternative. And who's to say who knew what? For one, you weren't in the locker room, neither was I. So who's to know? Who's to say? The thing about like pay-per-views and things of this nature is it happens live and at a split second. Like no one knows who knew what. No one knows if they were told. No one knows if these guys are going to be punished. If they're not going to be punished, nobody knows if they were even instructed to do it. That's just the truth. That's what I'm saying. I feel like you aren't looking at this with an open mind. I feel like that you kind of just see it. A guy gets hit in the head with something, and you're kind of just like F this. Like that's what I feel like you're like, and I think that's unfair.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry. I've literally been studying the CTE issue since the inception of this podcast. I mean, I've had Big Vito come on the show and go into pretty great detail about it. I've had Pat Carter, former NFL player and a former NFL assistant coach, go into great detail about this CTE issue. It's something that we're very serious about. So when I see a promotion that's a new promotion, and the first thing that they show me is people getting their heads smashed in, I walk away from that and I say, well, that's pretty irresponsible. Period. Irresponsible. Unnecessary.
But again, how are you holding the company for that? Did you do due diligence and look at what happened inside of that match? I don't think that you did.
I don't even know what that means. What does that even mean?
I feel like you saw someone get hit in the head with something. I mean, who's to say that it was supposed to be that way? Like, who's to say that? I feel like that there wasn't enough research done by you. You just looked at it and kind of like, okay, yep, I'm over it. And that's,
you know how many headshots
right.
were in that match? DeJuan O'Neal. Do you know how many headshots were in that match?
No, I didn't count them. I was too busy being a fan.
There were over a dozen of them. I counted. Do you understand? It wasn't like it was a one-time deal.
I don't think there were over a dozen headshots.
Okay, I think you better go back and watch again, my man. It was Headshot City.
I'm gonna go back and rewatch that. A dozen seems excessive.
Okay, well, Oh, now you're speaking my language, aren't you? Yeah.
No, I'm saying you insinuating that there was a dozen seems excessive. That seems like a mighty high. That seems like a high number to throw out there. I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch. There was nowhere near 12. No way.
So you the actual wrestler here, because I'm not a wrestler. I don't claim to be a wrestler. I'd be the first person to tell you there's no way I could do what you guys do. Where's the threshold when it was an accident, but now that was on purpose and that was too much? I mean, what's the number there for you personally? If you're taking a look at someone, your experience and your understanding, how many headshots is too many?
Me personally, about 4, around 4.
4.
Yeah.
4.
And unlike you, I'm a very understanding person, right? So the first one, okay, could have been nerves. The second one, all right, settle down. The third one, okay, this is a habit now, like, and then you start to take measures to protect yourself. And then after the fourth one, like, it's going to be what it's going to be.
Okay, well, it was what it was, which was just a stinker in that regard. It totally ruined the entire Battle Royal match, which really was a hodgepodge of nonsense to begin with. There were some very entertaining spots. I think MJF was fantastic. I think Sonny Kiss did a great job as well. I don't understand why Sonny Kiss hasn't been promoted more than he has, but that's a whole other story. But the two of them were highlights for me. I thought Orange Cassidy and his little in-the-pockets gimmick, okay, I mean, that's going to entertain somebody. Fine. But the headshots took me out. And what took me out even more was Adam Page winning that match. Makes no sense. 0 sense for this guy to be the number one contender to battle for the AEW championship.
Why does that make no sense to you?
Well, who else is in the title picture? So he's guaranteed a shot against the winner of the Kenny Omega Chris Jericho match, right?
Well, you realize too that there was no title picture. Like, they made the title picture that night, so you can't say that. I mean, you have your favorites, and you have your, hey, this guy's probably gonna do it, and everyone has an armchair booker seat, and they're gonna say, hey, they should put it on this guy, and then they're gonna get a contingency of believers, and hey, they should put it on this guy, and then that guy's gonna. But there was literally no title picture prior to Double or Nothing. So
I don't even know what you're talking about. They announced that the winner of the Jericho Omega match was going to take on the winner of the Battle Royal, and the person who wins that match would be the first AEW champion. So they're letting you know. They were painting the picture for you before you even started the review.
That is a frame. That's not like, because you had all these different personalities inside of the Battle Royal. You had them all. So I mean, I can't believe that you're shocked or surprised or taken aback by the fact that Adam Page won it.
I'm not surprised, shocked, or taken aback. I'm disgusted by it.
Why?
Who's in the title picture? Once again, Adam Page, Chris Jericho, one of those two are going to be the first champion. Kenny Omega, at some point, is going to have to get his rematch. You have Cody Rhodes, which everyone's expecting at some point he's going to be in that mix. And then you have Dean Ambrose. Or Johnny Moxley, whatever the hell he calls himself.
John Moxley. Whoa.
And then you have MJF, who created a feud with Adam Page. So all 6 of those people they've communicated to the world, these are the 6 people who we're going to start our title picture with. These are our top 6. These are the ones. Everybody else is everybody else. This is what we got here.
And all 6 of those men have skills. I don't understand. Like, their bad moments are far and few in between. If you can remember any in recent history, like I don't understand what the problem is. It's wrestling.
Of course you don't understand. Why would you understand? Why would somebody who just wants to defend, that's what you do, which I notice a lot with you, Dewan. You defend wrestling even when it doesn't make sense. At some point, it's okay to take a step aside and say, hey, you know what? That doesn't make sense. That wasn't right. It doesn't make any sense to claim that you're going to promote women's wrestling and women's wrestling is going to be a focus in your company, and then both women's matches are so far down the card. It literally is an embarrassment. You couldn't have put the women's match, which should have been a triple threat, but they turned it into a four-way. You couldn't have put that in one of the last 3 slots on the card? Who booked this? If you're serious about promoting something, why wouldn't you put it in a featured spot?
Every match in that particular show was a feature match. Every match was an AEW audition.
You're kidding me right now.
I'm not kidding you, because the microscope of the world was on MGM Grand that evening, and every match was an audition. Hey, we signed this person. We signed this person. We signed this person. Even if you were not a follower of the Elite, Cody, the Young Bucks, Omega in that camp before AEW, the fact that they sold out MGM Grand and they were doing something different put eyes there. There were people in Vegas, probably not even wrestling fans, that bought tickets just because they were in Vegas. So,
this makes no sense.
How does it not make any sense?
It can't be an audition if they're already hired in a damn company. And the people who aren't hired, most of them were people who are already under contract elsewhere, like the Lucha Brothers.
No, I'm not talking about. I'm not talking about the wrestlers auditioning. I'm talking about the company in itself.
What are they auditioning for? They already got their deals. There's no audition. They're in.
No. The eyes of the world were on this product and whether or not, hey, this is good, this is bad. Hey, maybe they need a stronger women's division. Everyone has an opinion, and a brand new company like Making Waves is going against the big boys up north. Every match was legit an audition. Some went really, really well. Some I would have probably booked differently. But every match was an audition for the world, for AEW. And I don't understand, what a quote-unquote feature spot is supposed to look like.
I don't know. Look at Cody Rhodes and Dustin Rhodes. That looked like a feature to me. The Young Bucks versus the Lucha Brothers. That was a feature. Certainly Omega and Jericho were a feature. You mean to tell me you couldn't put the main women's match that you had, which should have been a triple threat, but they turned into a fatal four-way, you couldn't have put that as one of the last 3 matches? It should have been the second to last match.
I mean, and before the 3, it was a women's match before the 3 you just named.
You're missing my point. That's the point I'm making. Why would you, if it's so important, why is it so far down the damn match card? It should be in one of the top 3 spots.
I don't think positioning on a card dictates the importance of your match.
You're out of your mind. This is embarrassing. You're insulting people's intelligence now with a statement like that. And I don't know.
How so? How so?
Let me tell you something. The first match on the card sets the tone for the entire card. Okay? Your main event is the thing that's supposed to bring people in. And then you have a special attraction match depending on what type of card this is. This is a pay-per-view, right? So you have your special attraction match, which was the Cody and Dustin Rhodes match. I would argue that match was promoted more than any other match. If you say you're serious about women's wrestling, there is absolutely, positively no reason why the Young Bucks and the Lucha Brothers had to go after the women's match. The main women's match. I'm not talking about the Japanese ladies who ended up having the best match of the night, by the way. The main women's match. There was no reason why that match shouldn't have been the second to last match of the night.
What are you grading? What are you grading them as the best match of the night? I disagree there as well, but
of course you would. Of course you would.
Yeah, I do. But before that, it was Cody. They were right before Cody and Dustin.
Again, and you know what that position was? That was a bathroom break position. Just so you know, just so you can score here. And you don't have to take my word for it. You can read every other review. The way that card was built, that women's match was built as a bathroom break match.
I disagree. The Best Friends versus Angelico and who did he tag with? Jack Evans. That was more of a bathroom break match than the Japanese women's match. The Japanese women's match.
No, I'm not talking about the Japanese women. I'm talking about the other women's match, the main women's match. The Japanese women's match was great. That was the best thing.
You talking about Britt Baker and Kylie Ray? With
yeah,
Nyla
keep
Rose?
going. Nyla Rose and Awesome Kong. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. They completely disrespected the entire concept of women's wrestling by the way that they chose not to promote that match. It was embarrassing. I'm holding them accountable. Okay, let me tell you something. I have no issue with AEW being another place for you wrestlers to work. I think that's a great thing. Okay, are they competition at WWE? It's embarrassing to even say that. Of course they're not. But the fact that they're another place to work, congratulations. But when you tell me that you're going to present yourself a certain way, and that these are the expectations, and then you fall short, well, then I'm going to call it out.
How did they fall short? Is what I'm asking you.
Come on.
Listen, what do you mean? This is probably, and this was probably legit the most diverse card on pay-per-view in wrestling ever.
You're calling that card diverse?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You're looking at the 6 people who are in the title picture. The last 3 matches of the night. Hell, the last 4 matches, because that 4th match was they just threw a bunch of Japanese people in the same ring and say, hey, there's our diverse. You know what? You and I are going to agree to disagree, because at this point you're insulting people's intelligence. And I think that's enough.
What?
I think it's enough. So how about this? Plug your social media and all that stuff, because at this point you're being ridiculous. You just want to protect the business by sticking up for stuff that's complete nonsense, and it's embarrassing. I'm just going to tell you that first. It's embarrassing.
Listen, I'll agree to disagree for the sake of keeping the peace. You guys out there, you can find me on Becoming Second to None on YouTube. Dewan O'Neal 1 on Instagram, Dewan O'Neal, the number 2, the letter N on Twitter, and Dewan O'Neal on Facebook if you would like to continue this discussion. I can't believe, Duke, you're an intelligent guy, man. You got to know better than this.
I'm going to tell you something right now, folks. I apologize, because I thought this guy was going to come in and actually be forthcoming and tell the truth. Instead, I got a company man skit going on here. And it's
company? What?
It's a company man.
It sounds like the boys in WWE are greasing your palms to have this debate with me, Duke. That's what it sounds like. I'm gonna get to the bottom of this, man. I swear to you, I am. But you and I offline have had better conversations about this than this.
Truly, this has just been an embarrassment. Everybody knows that I take WWE to task more than anybody. So the fact that anyone would even claim that my palm is being greased, it's an embarrassment. I'm holding both companies accountable for what they say. You, on the other hand, are trying to cape for AEW, and I guess we'll just, you got the Superman tattoo, so I guess you're the AEW Superman now. Good job. Dewan O'Neal, everybody, he's second to none. He is the AEW Superman.
Wow. That's how you're going to sign me off, Duke?
I don't have a choice.
There's always a choice. That's exactly the point of AEW. That's exactly what I've been trying to make you understand. There's always a choice.
So there you have it. And, like I told you folks, it was contentious. It was absolutely contentious. And quite frankly, that stems from Mr. Dewan O'Neal, a.k.a. Second to None, this indie wrestler. He wants to be the Superman. He wants to defend AEW to the end. And it's really silly. And a lot of folks out there, this is what they're doing. Listen, I don't have an issue with AEW. I want them to succeed. But I'm going to hold them accountable, especially if they're going to claim that they are competition to the number one pro wrestling company in history, the WWE. And everybody listening to this show, you know, I take the WWE to task every single week. One of the things that really annoyed me this week in WWE programming is the fact that the lack of emphasis on women's wrestling continues. They act as if they can't have more than one or two women's matches, despite the fact that they have the most talented collection of women's talent in the entire wrestling industry. It just boggles my mind, the lack of consistent quality storylines and matches for the women, and time for them to do their thing. I also felt the first hour of Raw it didn't really have any wrestling in it, which didn't make any sense to me. Now, mind you, Cesaro carrying that Punk Ricochet, that made up for it because that was a pretty solid match. I enjoyed the tag team match with Becky Lynch and Nikki Cross against the Iconics. Wow, I was asking last week, where are the Iconics? Well, I guess we found them. Yeah, that was cool. And the main event was all right too. But my point is that I wish there was a little bit more wrestling and there should have been more women's content. I take the WWE to task. You all know that. I don't play games. So why do you expect me to give AEW some kind of pass when they themselves are marketing themselves not only as an alternative, but as a competitor to the WWE? Okay, competitor, here's what I like and here's what I don't like. I like the Japanese women match. It was great. Young Bucks versus the Lucha Brothers, that was solid. I didn't like all the blood. I didn't like the headshots, and I certainly didn't like the fact that you don't understand how to use your YouTube channel properly. And furthermore, the commentary was terrible. Jim Ross was sitting there with Alex Marvez, who never did a wrestling commentary before, and Excalibur, and those two bozos, they were going too fast. Nothing that they said actually mattered. Meanwhile, Jim Ross was telling stories, okay? He was putting a soundtrack to the visual that we saw. Jim Ross was excellent. Those other two guys, I don't know what the hell they were doing. Don't do it again. Get rid of them, or these guys got to improve. And for Marvez, I'll give him a pass because that was his first shot. I guess he's going to improve upon the job eventually, hopefully. Who knows? Excalibur, he has some experience. I don't know why the guy wears a mask. That's kind of weird. That's a whole other story. So, I'm not going to stop providing detailed, sharp analysis because I respect you listeners. I respect your intelligence. That's the name of the game here. And if AEW is going to be in the game, okay, bring it on. I'm going to call them out. For the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's how it goes. I thought Brandy Rose was fantastic. I do wonder the executive structure of AEW, where are the people of color? And I'm not talking about the owners. They're the ones with the money. With the exception of Brandy Rose, where are the people of color at? They're backstage agents who, the ones that they've made public and the ones we've seen in pictures, where are the people of color at? They're preaching diversity, and the top 6 people who were presented to everybody as having anything to do with their title picture are all white guys. Where is the diversity at? Oh, because you put 6 Japanese women in a ring against each other, 6 Asian women, and you said, hey, there it is? Come on, stop that. Take that Japanese match out of it. The guy from SCU, Scorpio Sky, was the only person of color who even was in a winning effort on the card. That's diversity? Well, I mean, come on, Duke. Somebody has to lose, man. What's the big deal? Well, it's a pretty big deal. You claim diversity and then you don't present folk in a manner that lets the world know that you, the company, feels that they're special. It's like the women. I don't have a problem with Dr. Britt Baker winning her match. I have a problem with the fact that her match wasn't the second to last match of the night. The most important championships in that company should be the women's and the men's championship. World Heavyweight Championship. Those two are it, and everything else comes after that. The women should have either been the main event or the co-main event. Period. Period. If you're serious about diversity, that is what you do right out of the gate. A bunch of humanoids out there says, well, it was their first major pay-per-view, man. Give it time. What time? If you're serious about it, you walk in the door that way. What time? There's no time. What time? Not to mention that was their second pay-per-view. All In was the first pay-per-view. Well, they weren't really called AEW before, Stop it. Stop it right now. Stop it. Give me that crap. Don't give me that crap. You look at the top of the title picture. You're guaranteed Adam Page versus Chris Jericho because they said the winner of the Jericho Omega match was going to take on the winner of the Battle Royal, and whoever won that match would be crowned AEW's first champion. So that's what we have coming up. Kenny Omega's going to ask for a rematch, of course. Cody Rhodes has to be in the picture at some point. MJF has an issue with Adam Page, so he's somehow, some way involved. And oh, by the way, a guy by the name of Johnny Moxley, a.k.a. Dean Ambrose, he inserted himself into stuff. That's 6 people. Not a single one of them is a person of color. Don't tell me you have diversity. What diversity? I had a couple people say to me, well, what people of color could you get? There are none who could be in that spot. Come on. Don't do that. Don't do that. There isn't a single Asian, Hispanic, Black wrestler on the planet who could have been put in the MJF or Adam Page spot where you're featuring them on Being the Elite, where you're featuring them on your social media, where you're telling the world that these are important people that they need to pay attention to, where you're giving them featured spots on the pay-per-view for them to shine. You couldn't do that? But you're different, right? You're the alternative, right? You care about this stuff, right? It's a joke. But I'm the bad guy because I called it out. People are upset with me because I said that the headshots were ridiculous and it shouldn't be happening. In the CTE era, people are upset with me for calling that out. People are upset with me because I said, hey, the blood, what the hell was that? The ref doesn't even have gloves on. People are mad at me over that. I got guys in the business who contracted hepatitis. People bleeding all over the place. Come on. Come on. And the worst part is, I'm not mad at AEW. I'm just holding them accountable. These are the things you need to improve upon. That's what I said in my article. And they got time to improve upon these things. But we can't pretend like it didn't happen. And we can't pretend like we can't speak up about it or nothing will change. That's one thing that I know about the entire industry. We can make change if we put the pressure on them. Make no mistake about it. Kofi Kingston being champion is an example of change where we just put the pressure on him. You couldn't say the man didn't grab the brass ring. You couldn't say that the man wasn't marketable enough. There was nothing you could say about Kofi Kingston. It's not good enough. Give me a break. You had to put the title on that man. Could not justify not doing it. So, AEW will not be treated specially. I am going to call them out the way I called the WWE out. I'm going to point out what I like the Japanese women's match. I'm going to point out what I don't like the headshots. And to the Dewan O'Neills of the world, to the humanoids out there, Cody Rhodes himself, I don't care. Be upset. That's your business. It's your cross to bear. Got to get out of here. Join us next week, folks. I have some powerhouse interviews, some great content coming up. In fact, I'm going to throw something out there to you. I am looking for someone with ballet experience. A dancer, preferably who has ballet experience. Because one of the things that I hear when I'm complaining about the headshots and the blood, a lot of these people in the wrestling industry and even some of these fans who think they're so smart. Well, it ain't ballet. It ain't ballet, it's wrestling. Disrespecting ballet and dance. Acting as if it's not physically demanding on the people who participate in such mediums of entertainment. So I'm going to get a ballerina. I'm going to get a ballet dancer to come on the show and to educate everyone, including myself, on just how physically demanding ballet is. Because I think that's an interesting thing here. I surmise, I'm taking a wild guess here, that it's pretty physically demanding. And their injuries are pretty real. So maybe this ain't ballet talk needs to go by the wayside. I don't know. Duke Loves Rasslin, RASSLIN, @gmail.com. Shoot me a message, or shoot me a message on Facebook or Twitter @Duke Loves Rasslin. If you are a dancer, if you have ballet experience, or if you have somebody you want to suggest and they're cool with it, we'll bring them on the show. I'll interview them. They can share their experience, and we'll put on the show, broadcast it to the world, and we'll challenge these ridiculous concepts. Train don't stop, baby. This is Duke Loves Wrestling. We're 3 years in the game, but we're not stopping. We're going to keep the pressure on these topics, get you to think. Maybe look at things a little differently. Question what's been given to you. Why not? And if you disagree, that's okay too. I'm all for it. Everybody knows I won't run away from a discussion, a debate. I'm all for it. Bring it. Bring it on. That's right. Be kind to yourselves. Be kind to others. Oh, listen. Hey, before I let you go, head over to the YouTube channel. It is not under the Duke Loves Wrestling playlist. So you're going to have to look at my uploads. But I uploaded a exclusive interview with the one, the only Peter Vesey. He's in the Basketball Hall of Fame. He's an award-winning journalist and writer. And he talks about the NBA Finals and some other things, the mess that happened with the Lakers, the whole 9 yards. This is something related but separate to what we're doing over here. It was such a great interview that I had to make it its own separate thing. It's a special. I think I entitled it the NBA Finals Special. So head over to YouTube and check that out too, please. Please. My man Peter Vesey, that's the dude right there, man. Be kind to yourselves, be kind to others. Take it away, Tony Schiavone.
Mr. Tony Schiavone, and we're desperately out of time on Duke Loves Wrestling.